She's a certified master trainer, training manager, and instructional system designer. Used to be a trainer to the Department of Defense and the U.S. Marine Corps. After that, he has been a radio host for more than 11 years because he has a lifelong interest in speaking, performing, and sharing. He even mentioned that performing on the streets of New York. If you look at Solarzar's LinkedIn profile, you find it quite attracting. It says, with more than 25 years leadership experience, I know how to engage key stakeholders, sell ideas, and implement strategy. I asked Solarzar, can we put it on our event flyer? And he said, no, I'm not going to talk about that today. Today is about making connections. Sure, you cannot do any of those without first making connections. Ladies and gentlemen, Solarzar Dellaporta, using your authentic voice to create connections. Solarzar, take it.
All right, thank you so much, Yifeng. Thank you for that wonderful, wonderful introduction from the material, obviously, that you looked up as well as I provided myself. So you were very, very aggressive in doing that. And I'd like to ask everyone, as already mentioned, please mute, keep your videos on because I would like to see you. And if there's a reason you need your video off, keep it off. That's quite all right. But I'd like to know by raising hands, how many people are actually members of ASML Silicon Valley Toastmasters tonight that are here? Okay. And how many of you that are here have less than 5 years in Toastmasters? How many have 5 to 10? Raise your hand. And how many have over 10? Raise your hand. See, I switched hands on that one. So thank you so much. To get started, I'd actually like to take a moment to settle. We have this tendency in Toastmasters to go in the way that we always go of saying we have to have an opening, a middle, and a closing. But I'd like everybody to settle. This is a Friday evening. People are coming to the end of a work week. I'd like you to feel yourself a little anchored to your chair and feel your feet on the floor and just allow yourself. We're going to take 3 breaths to get started. I'd like you to take in a deep breath and just feel it going into your lungs and filling up your lungs, and then release it slowly. Just in, out. Okay, we're going to take another one, another deep breath, the air coming in. And as it goes out, it helps to push away the stress, the tension, and everything else that's in us so that we can now take in another deep breath. And feel the tension start to go away as you revert to your normal breathing style. Just allow the breath coming in to be cleansing. Allow the breath going out to be releasing. Release everything that you came here with. And I'd like you to feel ready to actually receive, because what I'm hoping to do is serve you tonight. One of the reasons I'm here is because a conversation that Gavin Wang and I had back in August. He's a Division D director, and I was at his training session at the club officer training, and he attended part of my VPPR training. And then he left and he came back. And as a result of that, Gavin said to me, I want to know how you create connection with the people. And I said, well, it's something that's developed over the years. I've never actually thought about how I do it. But he said, would you be willing to do a presentation on it? And I said, I'll give it a try. So what we're about to see, ladies and gentlemen, at this stage in my life, you are about to see me once again not be a virgin. I'm actually coming out to present to you something I've never done before. Now, out of the folks here, besides Dennis, how many of you saw Dennis's beautiful presentation last month on evaluation? If you haven't seen it, I recommend you get the link and see it. And the reason I mention that, because Dennis spoke so beautifully about how we need to do our evaluations with empathy. Now, with empathy, that means we actually try to connect and understand the person. It's not about Toastmasters. It's not about structure. It's about, are we connecting to the person? I think that makes an excellent segue into why I've been asked here and why I'd like to go forward. One is I'd like to tell you why I'm here and who I am. I've already told you a little bit of why I'm here because Gavin asked me, and so that's why I'm here. But let me tell you who I am. Now, Yifeng gave you some of it, but I'm originally from New York. I went to Catholic Grammar School and Cardinal Spellman High School in the Bronx on a scholarship. Now, at the age of 16, my father and I had a disagreement about a haircut. The disagreement turned into an argument. The argument turned into a fight. In the middle of February, during a snowstorm at the age of 16, I was put out of my house with a carry bag and overcoat and 16 cents. I lived on the streets for over 2 years. I traveled down to Florida and helped offload Russian fishing trawlers. I traveled to New Britain, Connecticut, and worked at an offset printing plant. But mostly I stayed around the New York area. I did many, many things to stay alive, some legal, some illegal. Finally, my father and I had a reconciliation. I returned home and I enlisted into the Marine Corps. I went through the enlisted ranks to the officer ranks before retiring over 21 years. Now, both of those experiences taught me a lot about people, persons, and needs. But yet, none of them have any value. None of that information has anything to do with who I am. It just has to do with the mythology of where I came from. What makes us create connections with people is what we do with our story and how we've taken our story into ourselves. As mentioned, I'm a DTM twice over, I'm a master trainer. All of those things are skills and techniques. And what we teach in Toastmasters are skills and techniques to help us become more comfortable at what it is we're doing. But after a car is built, do you go back to the manufacturer and ask for the engineering plans that put it together? No, you don't. So you see, when you meet me today, you're meeting the sum of all those experiences. And I am either able to connect to you where you are, and you're able to connect to me where I am, and we don't need to know what else surrounds us. What is really important to us as a Toastmaster? I believe it's very simple. What's the Toastmaster International vision? We're in an organization that empowers people to achieve their full potential and realize their dreams through our member clubs. People throughout the world can improve their communication and leadership skill, giving them the courage to change. We are in an organization whose intention is not to really make us better speakers, whose intention is to make us better leaders. It's also its intention and vision is to give us the courage to change any area of our life. So when we speak at a Toastmasters Club, very often we're looking at our speech assignment and we're looking at those objectives, and that's appropriate. But are we looking at our audience as the people we're trying to serve by being in Toastmasters? See, through our member clubs, we know that we provide a mutually supportive and positive learning environment in which every member has the opportunity to develop communication and leadership skills, which in turn foster self-confidence and personal growth. Well, let's go to the every member, which isn't bolded compared to the others. You see, every member is not cookie cutter for every member. Each of us bring our own uniqueness to what we do. Now, Patricia Fripp tells us that we speak to be heard and understood, and we also speak to be remembered and repeated. So ask yourself, why do you speak? Why do you speak? Is it to be heard and understood? Is it to be remembered and repeated? The foundation of every presentation has 3 elements which was put into the flyer. Why do you speak? You could say, oh, it's to do my Toastmasters, it's to get my DTM, it's to do something else. No, no. It's not why you joined Toastmasters. You didn't join Toastmasters to become a DTM. You didn't join Toastmasters to compete at a speech contest, or maybe you did. You joined Toastmasters for something else more personal. You don't have to share that, but think about why you speak. And then think about the difference between the purpose and a premise of the speech, which I'm going to share with you in a little bit. This tends to get people when they first see it. They say, oh, those are the same thing. Well, definitionally, they might be the same, but they're not the same. And then the last reason we should be speaking, the most important one from my perspective, is to actually find our authentic voice. Find out who we are. Why do you speak? Do you just speak to be heard? Do you just speak to be understood? Do you speak to be repeated and remembered? Or do you have another reason why you speak? You see, Oscar Wilde, the Irish playwright and poet, told us, be yourself. Everyone else is already taken. So beautifully, when Dennis talked about evaluation, he talked about having that empathy to connect and speak to the test speaker when you're, or the speaker when you're an evaluator, in a conversation with them. We often forget that when we're speaking at our clubs, we're actually in a conversation. Oh, maybe sometimes it's more one way than two way, but it's a conversation. It's not a presentation. So if it's not natural for me to do this, I don't need to practice that gesture. Dennis talked about sitting down instead of standing up, which is more natural in the Zoom environment. So you don't have to stand to give your presentation in your club in the Zoom environment. What you want to do, what we want to do, is be who we are. Now that seems very broad. Pam and I actually had a conversation and she said, oh, that's so broad. Nobody knows what that means. People are always saying, be authentic, be who you are. And sometimes we don't really know who we are, but we know who we're not. And we can start by not being that person. So why do you really want to speak? Think about that for a minute. And then I'm going to ask some of you to maybe share your thoughts. Raise your hand or raise your electronic hand and just share why you think you want to speak. So does anybody want to share why they want to speak? Don't feel put on the spot. You know why? Because if you're sharing why you want to speak, then that's why you want to speak. It's not wrong. It's not that this is an absolute test. It doesn't get sent off to the state for grading. I'll tell you why I joined Toastmasters, and then we'll go to Gavin, who's bravely put his hand up there.
Okay, you go first.
Okay, well, I joined Toastmasters because I wanted to learn how to speak better. I literally did. Somebody had told me about it when I was in the Marine Corps, and they said, you should go do this. You would have fun. You would enjoy it. You would love it. But I held it off. And then I retired, which was not a full retirement, but it was enough to pay some of the bills, and got a job being a consultant for the Department of Defense. And I found myself what I consider wasted. I was doing work, but I wasn't expressing myself. So I joined Toastmasters. And I've stayed with it for 25 years because it gives me the opportunity to express who I am. Gavin, how about you? Why did you join?
To build the authentic connection with the people who raised me up, who support me, lead me, mentor me, because the connection, actually our power comes from connection, the authentic connection. So by joining Toastmasters, I have acquired a lot of tips, techniques to communicate more effective in terms of creating an authentic connection. That's the reason.
That's excellent. Excellent. Yes, Shabir, did I say that correctly?
Yes, perfectly. And you can say it by saying, shh, beer. I joined particularly this club. I was a Toastmaster and I kind of felt like that wasn't me. But then I found Improv Master. And the reason I can see now that improvisation and being practicing enables me to connect with my authentic self.
See, an interesting thing I'd like to share on that. Thank you, Shabir. Thank you, Gavin. Both excellent responses. What I'd like to share about that is the nice thing about Toastmasters is we get to shop around with no expense. We go to find a club where we find the community that we think is our mutually supportive community, that we can be more of who we are. So if I go to a club that's not me, for instance, there's a club down here at the Naval Postgraduate School. They're very kind of formal and structured and everything else. And everybody thinks because I have 21 years in the Marine Corps, I should want to belong to that club. I don't want to belong to that club. I did 21 years in the Marine Corps. I don't want that much structure. I want a little more spontaneity. I want a little bit more impromptu. I want a little bit more relaxed. There's nothing wrong with them, but I shouldn't have to belong that. That's the box people want to put us in. And so we start trying to please people by fitting their boxes, not ours. So Shabir and Gavin gave such excellent responses to that. And that's how we find who we are, is by finding the community that lets us be who we are. That's why we're here. The interesting thing I want to touch on related to that is Gavin also mentioned in terms of the techniques. We teach wonderful techniques in Toastmasters, wonderful techniques. We do. But they're techniques. I don't become a better speaker, as I said, by doing this, by doing that, by having imaginary conversations, if it's not me. Now, in a humorous speech, probably works fine. But if I'm talking to you, that's all histrionics. That's all show. That doesn't create who I am. At the beginning, I told you about me. Even though I said it had nothing to do with who I am, what it does is it gives you a picture of where I came from. So now you feel you have a sense of some background of me. Doesn't necessarily mean you know me, but you have a background of me. So what do you think is one of the best things you can do to create connection with any audience? Any guess? A personal story. Doesn't have to be great, doesn't have to be grand. So when Gavin came into that training session, throughout the session, I was constantly sharing personal experiences and asking for personal experiences back from the attendees. It created a nice connection. As I shared with Gavin even at that time, it was a small group, so it was easy to create that bonding of a small group. But it's not the material of being a vice president of public relations that's going to bond us. It's actually being a human being going back and forth. So we just got two great responses from Gavin and Shabir about why they joined and what they did. Let's take a look just a little bit going forward here. There are other reasons some people join, and we need to acknowledge that they are their reasons. Why do you really want to speak? People want someone to listen. Some people believe their opinion is important. Some people because they need to present at work and need to improve their skills. Because you have to sell services or products and you want to know how. And some people just want to be the center of attention. Now, remember, our club is for every member, but that doesn't mean every member belongs to our club. And so it's important when we look at our clubs, we start seeing the communities that we draw in are a reflection of the community we've created in the club. And so if someone wants to be the center of attention and that doesn't fit with our club, we're a whole bunch of introverts that sometimes have trouble saying our names, maybe the center of attention doesn't belong in our club. You know? But everybody on this list can learn something from Toastmasters where they want to tonight or not. But the truth is what Gavin said and what Shabir said, we actually speak to connect. The most important thing we do when we speak is connect with people. So when Gavin came into that training, I was connected with the people there and he felt connected. We drew him in, he offered information, he answered questions, he asked questions. He became a part of the community right away. The same thing we try to do with our Toastmasters clubs. We try to bring people in and make them feel welcome. And if we're being the culture we've created in our club, the people who fit with that always come aboard. But to maintain that culture, we ourselves have to maintain that connection. So let me go to the next issue because I believe this is critically important. Premise versus purpose. So when I went into that training in August, what Gavin didn't know is that I created an intention going into it. My intention was to be able to provide the information that was for the highest good of the people attending. My purpose was to train the attendees in the roles and responsibilities of the Vice President of Public Relations. Every speech has a purpose. Every speech has an outcome it's expected to get to. But the premise is what we as the presenter want to do with that audience. I want to serve the audience. I don't want the audience to serve my purpose. If I walked into that Vice President of Public Relations training and everyone was a totally new, actually I think that one, almost everyone was a totally new Vice President of Public Relations and fairly recent Toastmaster, I have to address things to their needs, not to the needs of the training material, to their needs. There's much more basic information I need to cover, much more ground and explanation that needs to be given them as a foundation. If I walk in and they're all experienced Toastmasters and Vice Presidents of Public Relations, then their needs are not the same. I don't need to spend time on accessing Club Central or doing something else. So the premise is fluid. I go in with the intention that I have a purpose, but my premise is based on the people that show up. And that's also how I start within me to create the intention. As a matter of fact, tonight I said I would create an intention to help serve the people here, except for Sarah Ivy. I don't want to give Sarah any information that helps her. But the truth is, you know, I want to provide you the information that most serves you in trying to create the connection from who you really are, not the who people have asked you to be in your life. And all of us have lived the who's. So when I was living on the streets, I was a junkyard dog. What do I mean by that? A junkyard dog will bite you whether you're going to hit them or feed them. I was a junkyard dog. That served my time. That served who I was at that moment. I went from there into the Marine Corps. I cannot tell you in the first 6 months how many fights I had, but I will tell you I had a lot of fights. Why? Because the junkyard dog just walked into a box with some structure, but they liked aggressive dogs. So that also was a framing experience. But the issue it comes down to is none of that today is a reflection of who I am as the person, but every one of us has taken every experience in our life and it's allowed us to frame the person we are in this moment. Those things don't define us. It's just like for those of you in the legacy program, when you did your Competent Communicator manual, that didn't define you as a Toastmaster. That started you on your journey. And when you did your first advanced manual, that didn't define you. It just moved you forward on your journey. And as you keep moving forward, even through pathways, as you get through the levels don't define us. They help us take the information and apply it as it serves us best. You can see many people who are distinguished Toastmasters that can't give a speech worth a lick. I'm sorry, they're out there. I think Dennis made a wonderful comment last time. It's just means I've given a lot of speeches. But the other thing for DTM is you can always remember, it really means don't time me. Just don't time me. But it also means that I've followed a prescribed course of information. Now, maybe I didn't take away as much as someone else. Someone else might have gotten more growth out of it. But that's not for us to judge. That's just for us to know The DTM defines a path we've taken, that we've taken that journey, that we've done the work. That's what it's for, just like our experiences in our background. So our experiences bring us up to the person we are now. So I am not a kid who lived on the streets. I am not a retired Marine. I am not a consultant to the Department of Defense. I am not a successfully thrice divorced individual. Successful, I'm telling you. But I am none of those things. Those are just moments in the journey that allow me to be the person I am now and the experiences of what I do with them. So to create connections, I don't come back with, here's who I am. You know, I'm a DTM, I'm a retired Marine. Da, 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 da. No, none of that matters. The only thing that matters is in this moment with you, can we connect and can I share something that maybe can help you do something different, do something better, or even set you on a journey of your own to find a way to do it on your own. That's all that matters. The other thing that Dennis shared that I want to reiterate, because I think it's so powerful, is that none of us are experts. In our careers, in our fields of expertise, we're experts. In Toastmasters, doesn't matter what your level is or what your title is. We're equals. We're peers. We're actually here to help each other improve as each of us best needs it. Now, if we keep that in mind more than anything else, then it's no longer about me and my speech. It's really about the people that I'm serving. And the people I'm serving are the people who are at the receiving end of whatever I'm sharing. So that's my premise, and it's not my purpose. We want to remember to always be the authentic us. I love this little girl. As a matter of fact, I'd want to ride along that dirt road and take her for ice cream and a merry-go-round ride. I just love this little girl. Look at her. Think about when you were 5, how unencumbered we were. We were all unencumbered. We didn't have these other mantras in our head about, you know, that's not the right way to do that. Really, we need to do it this way. And really, we need to think this way. And really, we need to behave this way. No. We just allowed ourselves to be free. That's the person inside of us wanting to come out, is the person that wants to be free. You can have structure. You can be courteous without having structure. But remember, no one can make us feel inferior without our consent, as shared by Eleanor Roosevelt. And Lord knows she knew what a strong person she was. What an amazing person she was. So when you go through a performance review or even an evaluation, have you ever sometimes shrunk a little bit when somebody said something? So somebody tells you, oh, you're really dynamic. You have a great speaking voice. I love the way you organize that speech. But that ending was really didn't really close the speech. And then we go away, oh my God, my ending was bad. What am I going to do about my ending? We just forgot all the positive things said to us. So in order for us to connect, we have to keep in mind certain things about all of us. If you ask a person about love, they're going to tell you about their heartbreak. If you ask a person about connection, they're going to tell you when they were disconnected. So if you ask a person for anything, we automatically tend to go to our lack of that in some situation or some time. If you ask about belonging, they'll tell you about when they didn't feel they belonged in a situation. You know, at a past district conference, I spoke to one of the keynote speakers. I won't tell you the person. They're very high up in the organization. But they gave their keynote presentation. I went up to her and I said, I wanted to let her know that from her presentation, what I really took away, that she was a person worth knowing. Now, let me say what I didn't say. What I also took away is I have no idea what she talked about. I don't know what her premise was, And I don't know what her purpose was. But I think she was trying to do the histrionics, do the techniques with the multiple screens, and do the electronics, and even have a little bit of a flip chart, and do all the types of things so that the structure overtook the presentation. I came away with nothing except I thought she was a person that would be worth knowing. That's exactly it. She didn't take her connectability and use it in her presentation. She had it. She was personal. She was lovely. She was very approachable. She didn't use that in her presentation. She took her greatest strength and threw it out the door for structure. Now, Gavin didn't know I created that intention at that club officer training when I did it. But that's what drew him in also, because the minute he entered the room, he was part of that intention. And so I look at that way. My intention is not to sell you anything. My intention is to share with you what I believe I've learned about connection, how I use it, how I think about it. But I'm really not going to give you a whole series of techniques that says, and when you're doing this, do this. I will give you some things, but what I'd like you to think about as we go through is how you would apply your connection to your audiences when you speak, at your club, at your work, at the coffee shop. On September 11th, 2001, I hesitated for this, but I'm going to share it. September 11th, 2001, I was scheduled to speak at a business luncheon. I called after seeing the planes go into the World Trade Center and the crash at the Pentagon, I called the business manager who was responsible for that luncheon, and I suggested that perhaps I shouldn't come to present at this meeting. Were they still having the meeting one, and should I present? I told him I didn't think I should present because my presentation was a little bit more entertainment centric, and he knew that. He had actually seen it, which is why he booked me. And he said, no, I want you to do exactly what you do. I want you to come here and do that. It's just what everybody needs. Well, I got there, and 20 minutes into a 30-minute presentation, I'm looking at blank faces, shocked, placid. People are just not present. They're not there. Now, my purpose was to do my presentation. But I shifted my premise in that moment and said, why don't we take a moment to reflect and pray for those who've lost their lives today, and also that those who will take us forward from this time forward have the strength and resources that they need. And we just went into silence. That was it. That's how I ended that day. My premise allowed me to adjust. It was not what the person who hired me wanted me to do. But my purpose had no business being in front of that audience at that moment in time. Honestly, that audience had no business being in front of me at that moment in time. They just were not able to be there. So when I said, let's take that moment, it was like air coming out of a balloon. As you could see, the holding of breaths just released and they relaxed. Oh, they didn't become friendly, jovial, or anything else. It wasn't that type of an event. But they were able to suddenly experience the moment that they were already fighting to not experience, to just have that moment, to have some self-comfort and group comfort. Nobody spoke aloud during that time. It was all silent. And I let it be. And I observed the people, and I let it be. When my time was up, I let it continue a little longer before I said, thank you, and stepped away. That was it. That's the difference between purpose and premise. We set an intention for our premise before we present, but we don't always know what it is until we introduce to our audience. Our purpose is the anchor of a presentation. But if we meet the premise and serve our audience, it doesn't matter if we never meet the purpose. The audience is the reason we're here to be served. Successful people are not successful because they do what other people do. They're successful because they know their uniqueness and they're willing to share it with others. Everybody that you know of that's been successful. Oh yeah, you listen to leadership. Even I do my own leadership. I have my Leadership Magic book, which completely talks against all the leadership taught. Because we're not square pegs going into round holes. Maybe someone is not an excellent communicator, but they're a brilliant visionary. Maybe someone is not a brilliant visionary, but they're a really good organizer. What we need to do is say, what are our skills? And how do we take our unique skill set and our uniqueness and bring that forward in our presentations? What makes me different than you? I'll tell you one thing, because I'm me and you're you. It's really that simple. So in order to be who we really are in ourselves, we have to be able to release what the world sees of us. So let me share a couple of things. I've already told you I'm a retired Marine. I do consulting for the Department of Defense. Okay, I have an earring. My fingernails are painted, and I have tattoos. How unique do you think that might be when I go into a room with general officers or senior executive level civil servants? It's pretty unique. It's pretty different. It's not that they've never seen a tattoo, but they haven't seen too many Marines with earrings and painted fingernails and tattoos. But you know what? These have purposes for me, and they're my uniqueness. I didn't bring them out earlier because I wanted to talk about them now. You might have noticed them, might have distracted you a little bit, but they're my uniqueness. I use them for me. But I'm still willing to bring my uniqueness into a world that's not used to that uniqueness. So when we say bring your uniqueness out, you have to be comfortable with it. There's no question about it. And what's the best place to be comfortable with things as we're learning and trying and growing? I don't know. Maybe Toastmasters. As Darren LaCroix likes to say, Toastmasters is where we go to practice and fail. So when you start thinking about your uniqueness, start thinking about what it is that maybe you're not bringing out. Now, many people say, oh no, I bring all mine out. It's out all the time. I don't know about that. I would kind of question that for most people, that it's really not out all the time. I would question that we've grown comfortable with what we do within the confines of our club. And I think even Dennis could recognize this, that there are so many Toastmasters, especially DTMs. I'm not trying to talk bad against all DTMs, but we shouldn't revere us. We shouldn't be on pedestals. We've achieved something. We've accomplished something. And you know what? Each of you have, whether you're a DTM or not, you've all achieved something or accomplished something in your life. All of us have things that we've done. All of us have survived the worst thing that ever happened to us, and we're all still here. But there are so many people in clubs that you see that after a few years, they kind of go into the coast mode. They start repeating the same speeches. They start just doing them just by rote. And then, when I said to Juliet, light and under window breaks, and everybody goes, oh, Solarzar, that's really wonderful. I just love the way you do Shakespeare. Knock it off. We're there to help each other grow. So let's help people grow. Let's allow them to bring their uniqueness to the table and not restrict them by the rules that we have to follow. The rules are there as guidelines, as ballasts, as supports to keep us going. But how we present, that was different. I was in a contest the other day and I saw a gentleman in the humorous contest. Actually didn't speak to the end. He had scrolling things. He acted it all out. I thought it was extremely clever, extremely clever. The cleverest presentation of a humorous speech that I thought I'd ever seen. He didn't win, and I can understand some elements of that, but it was thinking outside the box, and he brought himself to that presentation. The facial expressions, the scrolling words, saying what he was thinking or doing. So let's let our members explore who they are when they present, and let's not put them in boxes. Do the empathetic evaluations that Dennis was talking about, and not give them an evaluation that uses the same words of, that was wonderful, that was amazing, that was fabulous, I can't wait to see your next speech. No, tell them something worthwhile. You know what I really like about you, Dennis? I like your honesty. I like your open heart, and it always comes through when you speak and present to that. I didn't say anything was wonderful or amazing, so don't quote me on that. But that's what I like when I hear Dennis speak. That's what I like from him. He comes across that way. So I want him to know that. I want to support people for who they appear to be so that they're more confident in bringing the real self out there. Let's see what happens after Eleanor. I'm not sure even I know. Ah, yes. How could I forget? You know, Pierre Desjardins told us that we're a spiritual being having a human experience, but I think it goes even beyond that, because this is a card from one of the decks I use when I do tarot readings. It's the Osho Zen Tarot deck. It's the Major Arcana card 1. In a traditional tarot deck, this would be card of the magician, but this one is existence. And I like to mix it up with the words from Desiderata: beyond a wholesome discipline, be gentle with yourself. So as you seek your authentic self, as you seek your authentic voice, be gentle with yourself. You didn't learn to walk in a day. You certainly didn't learn to run in a day. You just don't have the vivid memories of how many times you pulled yourself up and then released and fell back down on your butt and pulled yourself back up again. That took time, but you kept at it because nobody told you you couldn't do it. It's only when we become adults, we start comparing to others and say, well, it didn't take him 15 times of pulling up on the table to stand. I must be doing something wrong. There must be something wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with you. Beyond a wholesome discipline, be gentle with yourself. And you are a child of the universe, no less than the trees and the stars. And whether or not it's clear to you, you have a right to be here. And the universe is unfolding as it should. You have a right to be here. You are no less than the trees and the stars. And in this card of existence, this woman is sitting naked and unafraid on a lily. She's staring out into the great universe and saying, I am as magnificent as you, and I have a right to be here, no less than the trees and the stars. So in order for all of us to really be our authentic self, we have to be willing to do it. There's always the issue of fear. We're always afraid, but the only way to get through a fear is to face the fear. Nothing happens. When we did machine gun exercise drills in the Marine Corps to charge a hill under a machine gun enfilade, it meant someone was going to die. If you go to your Toastmasters club and exhibit the true self of who you are, nobody's going to die. You may walk away feeling uncomfortable. Maybe that wasn't really you, but you can keep working on it just as you did your speaking. The only thing to be afraid of is what Franklin Roosevelt said, Eleanor's husband. The only thing we need to fear is fear itself. Whenever we go to present, always bring yourself to the presentation. You know, there are things you can do. You can speak with intention. You can use punctuation. You don't race through. I know I'm a fast talker, so I do apologize that sometimes I do that. But think of yourself at the coffee shop with someone having a tea or coffee. Now take that person that you are in that conversation and just make it a little bit bigger for your speech. Don't be me. Don't be Gavin. Don't be Dennis. Just be you a little bit bigger. And work on that little bit bigger and say, what things do I say and what ways do I say things to people that seem to create connection that they understand? Start with understanding, because if someone understands what you said, there's a connection. If you hear someone repeat what you said, you've kind of crossed over the line. You're headed down to the home stretch. Things going on in the neighborhood that I have no idea what it is. And also give us time to absorb with a pause. Always pause when you can. Check on your voice. If your voice is really monotone and you're always talking like this, you need to work on the voice a little bit. We want some variety. We want some energy. Think of when you talk about your family. your children, your grandchildren, your partner, your hobby. What's that hobby you've been doing? They did a study called the 777 study in Oxford. They took a group of children at the age of 7 and they asked them what they like to do. Some like to dance, some like to play music, some like to build things. Then 7 years later, they checked in with them to see how they were doing. And some were still a little interested in those things, or at least said they were, and some weren't. And 7 years later, they checked with them again. And 7 years later, they checked again. But what they found out is by the time they got to the 30s and 40s, the people who were happiest in life were doing something that related to what they liked to do when they were 7. If they liked art, they were still art. If they loved music, they might be in a band, even if it wasn't professionally. So the question is, what are the things that light your heart? Because when you talk about those things create that automatic emotional connection. The greatest, most beautiful, most energetic muscle in our body is our heart. HeartMath does studies on what they call heart coherence. If I walk into a room and create a connection through my heart, it will radiate energy out. Might not win everyone's hearts and minds, but I'll create a better connection than if I go in with my head and try to say, okay, here's what I need you all to do. No heart at all. Think of how you talk about those things that really matter to you and bring that to your speeches. As a matter of fact, you can make it easier by talking about those things in your speeches and bringing that same emotion as if you were sitting down showing me pictures of your children or grandchildren, or talking about that last vacation you all had, or talking about that scuba diving trip in the Grand Caymans that just lit you up. Think of those things. Create connections by opening yourself to create the connection from who you are, from what your passion is, and from wanting to connect with yourself. In the greatest selling self-help album of all time, The Strangest Secret, Earl Nightingale, the late great Earl Nightingale, said, "We become what we think about most." If we want to connect with our audiences, we have to ask ourselves, what do we think about most in terms of connecting with our audience? That kind of concludes my formal presentation, Mr. Toastmaster, Madam President. Are there any questions? Pam, you have a question. I can see it on your face. Yes, Gavin.
Okay, you are talking about the facing fear. I think this is important to give public speaking speeches or any matter in real life. For instance, when I was preparing the GRE for graduate school, I just felt daunted by the vocabulary. There are so many advanced vocabulary you may never met in real life or even in radio programs. And I was, yes, it was terrifying. And later on, I just overcome the fear. But there was a long time. It's about 1 year for me to overcome the fear of the GRE vocabulary or even delivering more public speeches. So do you have tips to shorten the timelines for me, at least, to overcome the fear?
Sure, I don't know if it shortens it, but let's start with your year. And let's start with beyond a wholesome discipline, be gentle with yourself. That means everything is done by inches. So I knew a woman who was massively, massively, massively overweight. She despised herself. She hated herself. She went into the bathroom one day and looked in the mirror and she said, "I have nice eyes." Every day she went in and looked in the mirror and said, "I have nice eyes." She began to find something she liked about herself, her nice eyes. As a result, she began to get a little bit more appreciative of herself and started taking actions related to her weight. So I think it's the same thing with every fear we have. We find 1 inch of that we can start with and say, was that 1 inch, did I get through that 1 inch okay? And then once I'm comfortable with that 1 inch, add the next inch and the next inch. The problem we often experience is we try to do too much at once. So if we walk in and say, hey, I want to learn public speaking from this Toastmasters club, how soon can I compete for the world championship? Well, you haven't even done level 1 of pathways yet. Maybe we'll start there. You know? I literally had a gentleman walk into a club one time, the first club that I belonged to, said he wanted to compete in the world championship. He literally said that. And he gave a 12-minute icebreaker. You know? So I think he had some work to do on really being able to hold his stuff in to the time frame allowed. And when I mentioned it to him, he was very offended, very offended. I said, well, you need to work more on the timing and stuff. I worked on it. Well, 12 minutes, you know, I'm sure you worked on it. But I don't know, maybe you picked a minute here and a minute there. I don't know how he worked on it. I'm not picking on him. But so if it's too big, it's not bad. People talk all the time about having big goals. Well, if a big goal scares you, don't have a big goal, but have a goal that moves you forward from where you are. Don't just do the same goal. For instance, I know I can eat a pint of Haagen-Dazs vanilla ice cream. Maybe I'll try for a quart next time, but I don't need to try for a pint because I already know I can do it. So my next goal should be a little bit of a stretch from that goal. It doesn't always have to be the big goal, the inches. And I'll bet you did inches that entire time, Gavin. You probably were doing these little inches and trying it. You know, you touched on something also, if you don't mind, I'd like to touch on, is the idea of language. What I try to do, I don't always succeed, but I actually try to simplify my language. In other words, I don't have to be erudite and have all these big words. Why? Because I want everybody to try to get what I'm saying. If my words are too big, then I'm going to lose people. I'm just kind of impressing myself. If I'm naturally that type of person, maybe that's different. But most of us really aren't. So I just shared with somebody who's having trouble with the word audacious. Change it to bold. Just make it bold. Plus, bold is a power word. It pushes energy out. Audacious, you go to the opera with audacious. You go to the race car with bold. So look at the words that say what you really want to mean. And don't worry about big. But sometimes we also do that. I feel like I've got to give you big words in my speech, when maybe that's not who I am anyway. And it's certainly not caring for my audience. Will my audience receive what I shared? So thank you once again for your question. It's a great question.
Okay, thank you. I believe Harry may have a question.
Oh, Harry, okay.
Oh. Hi, my name is Harry. I'm joining from Boston, so I'm a little 3 hours behind you.
Oh, late.
Thank you for sharing that, your personal story. I, as a father of 2 sons who are rebellious, sometimes I can connect with your experience. My question is to you. You mentioned that you had a fight with your father when you were 16, and you went out of the house and live on the street for a few weeks. My question is, did you reconnect with your father later on?
Yeah, several years later. It was 2 years. I was on the street for 2 years. And then a rumor, and it actually turned out to actually be a rumor. I didn't know. Mm-hmm. Rumor was he wanted to supposedly reconcile. Mm-hmm. So I went back home. I traveled back there and was there when he got in from work. And I spoke to him. He said, "Oh, you're here." I said, "Yeah." I said, "I understand you may want to talk." I didn't say reconcile, talk. Okay. I said, "I thought maybe if I could return home," I said, "I'll go to work with you and I'll find out more about you because maybe I don't know you, and maybe we could get to know each other a little bit better." So I worked with him for about 6 months. And we did that. And that was it. And that was kind of, you know, our return to any form of normalcy that we might have had.
Okay.
But the story I will share, Harry, I don't share it in my thing. I'm just going to share this one. The story is actually much more brutal than what I share because people don't always come back quickly from the brutality of it. So, but yeah, we made up. I worked with him. I got to know him on a different level, got to understand him. He got to appreciate me. And it changed our entire dynamic.
Okay, thank you. It's good to hear that.
Yeah. Yes. Is it Yi Zhang? Is that right? Or like?
Is that Tasha P4?
Yes. My question is, you talked about being free, and thank you, Solarzar, for your presentation. I have an upcoming keynote, and I think I'll definitely incorporate the tips that you've provided. My question is, you talked about being free, and I see in a lot of, even in, you know, myself, of course, but a lot of us, even in table topics, we still answer the same way. Are there exercises? As if you were to coach somebody? Are there exercises or things that you would suggest to help free people, or free them up, or loosen them up, or?
Well, and I haven't really coached people in a long time, and the reason is I used to tell them to run naked at noontime down by, but I guess that wasn't freeing enough. It was the wrong type of freeing, but that's just me. But actually, I would just say this, you know, we have a structure for table topics to give us a comfort to start to answer. Thank you, madam, or Mr. Table Topics Master. Then maybe we'll repeat the question, but then just be Tosh. Just be Tasha. Just don't worry about the Toastmaster structure or anything else. Allow yourself once in a while to just try free-forming whatever comes. And just try that. Now, you may not win table topics, but you might get a better sense of who you are. In other words, try doing it against the rules just to see how that makes you feel. It's sometimes frees up that restriction of, I can only say it this way. Because we think I've got to say, or I have to be really smart, or I have to be really profound, or I have to be really funny. Or no, you don't have to be any of those things. You just have to be you. You just have to be, and you're going to be wonderful in your keynote because you are such a powerful speaker and you always speak from your heart. It's just so natural with you. You're so powerful. So, yeah. But I would say just try not to follow the structure. You might even try saying, hey, usually I answer table topics this way, but I don't know if I'd even want to answer it that way. You know, I was thinking the other day when I went to get gas that if only I didn't have to get gas and the gas would fill itself. Well, when I was making dinner last night, I mean, just go wild with free associating as you're going through and just see if that changes your whole approach to doing your table topics. And somebody said, that was ridiculous. No, it's not. You're just working you. You know, we primed the pump. We primed the pump to get the water flowing.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I love it.
I love your smile.
It's
Lights up
8:30,
my room.
and want to thank everyone here for being with ASML SE Toastmasters. And we do workshops like this once a month. As Solarzar said, several years into Toastmasters, some people start to repeat, and the workshops are here to help me, at least me, to catch myself repeating, and if I'm aware of that, I can improve. So thank you a lot, Solarzar, for bringing the topic to tonight's meeting. And these workshops won't be possible without the help of our wonderful club coach and member Gavin, and the district club growth director and member Yifang, and the help of many other ASML as we members. Our regular club meeting will be Saturday at 5 p.m. If you want to join us, please talk to our video membership Yichong. And that should bring today's meeting to an end. If you have more questions, you can stay and ask Solarzar, but I think he will need to leave at 8:35.
Okay, thank you all. Thank you, Yifan, for hosting the workshop. And please help me give each of us, especially our presenter, Solarzar, a big round of applause. And yes, we have monthly workshop at the ASML, and we'll announce the next workshop 2 weeks before it happens. And I have one more thing, actually. Tomorrow, 2 p.m. to 3 p.m., we'll have another workshop. I know some of you are nodding. It's about the Toastmaster Revelation Program. It's sensationally successful, more successful than I have ever imagined, because I believe there will be more than 100 participants tomorrow for Elaine's session. So here, I personally invite each of you to join us tomorrow and to see what's going on, why this program is so successful. And I'm endeavoring to make this program as a world-class brand for communication